Hi everybody, welcome to this video. Whether you're watching live or as a replay, I'm here to answer some of your questions about eco-printing in the dirty pot. So who am I and where do I live? My name is Nicola Brown. I'm a textile artist living in rural Southeast Ireland, and my practice revolves around eco-printing without using powdered mordants, wet felting, and growing the plants that I use to colour my textiles. So feel free to drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. It's great to see people tuning in from all over the world. And the questions that I'm actually answering today, these have been asked in my public Facebook group. So I've popped the link here up on the screen for you if anybody's interested in joining the group. There are a couple of questions to answer just before I accept you when you request to join. And there's also a link in the video description below. So I'm just going to run through them. I've said that there are 10 questions and 10 answers. And in fact, I think there may be an extra part or two to one or two of the questions. But if you have any questions when I finish this stream, or before I finish, feel free just to drop me a comment while I'm live with 3 question marks before and after your question. And I'm here by myself, but hopefully I will be able to pick that up from the comment section that I can see on the screen, and I will answer them for you. So the first question that I would like to ask or answer is, how durable is wet felt? Now, the reason that this question was asked is the person who is wet felting is also eco-printing. And it's important to understand that when you make something from scratch, you want it to be functional. If it's, say, a garment to wear, or if it's a bag, etc., etc., a wall hanging doesn't have to be quite so durable. But if you're actually going to be wearing pieces, the second part of this question was, can you wash garments that are wet felted or eco-printing? So the simple answer to these questions, the first one, how durable is wet felt, and can you wash garments that have been felted and then printed? The simple answer is felt is exceptionally durable. There are examples from thousands of years ago in museums, I believe, and felt is used throughout the world and has been used throughout the world for shelter, for clothing, for footwear, and in more modern times for art and accessories as well. So it's extremely durable. However, you need to make sure, if you're making your own handmade felt, that you shrink it enough, because the majority of felt that I see that doesn't stand the test of time, or else it shrinks dramatically, it's felt that has never been fully finished properly. So wet felting is a 2-part process. The first is helping the fibers, laying them out, and they tangle together. That's called felting. And the second stage of the wet felting process is actually called fulling. And fulling is where the fabric that you have made shrinks. And if you're a new felt maker, I do have a video, a full step-by-step tutorial that I encourage you to watch on YouTube. But if you're a new felt maker and you are asking yourself the question, is my felt finished? Is it fully finished? Is there any more shrinkage available? I would suspect, if you're asking that question, you could work it for another 15 minutes minimum, because the felt should have no more stretch in it usually to consider it finished. And there might be slight exceptions to the rule depending on what you're making, but overall you want your pieces to be fully to have shrunk fully, and then you will have absolutely no problem washing them. You will have absolutely no shrinkage when you eco-print them, and then when you wash them out afterwards. So I hope that answers the question about how durable is wet felt, and can you wash garments that are felted and or eco-printed. And following on from that, we have a question, how can I prevent purchased wool garments and scarves shrinking when either washing or printing them? So I'm sure people have had the experience in the past when you had an older washing machine and you put something in and it came out about half the size it went in. I know I certainly did many years ago with a hand knitted mohair jacket that I had, and I somehow managed to put it in the machine and it came out about the size of a postage stamp. But the issue with buying wool garments, I have no problem eco-printing and washing in the machine, cashmere, wool, anything like that. But I make sure that I wash it in a modern washing machine on the wool setting prior to eco-printing. The very, very odd time something will shrink a little bit. But providing you have a modern machine, you can put it through on a 30-degree or a 40-degree wash. 30 is probably better than 40, although hand wash on my machine is 40, the wool wash. So I would say 30 degrees. The important thing is that there isn't much agitation. It's the combination of heat and agitation that actually makes the pieces shrink. So providing you're in a cycle that doesn't have a huge amount of agitation, has plenty of water, and it's not too hot, you will have no shrinkage whatsoever. So I like to wash all my garments that I buy, including cashmere and anything that says dry clean only. I wash all of those on the wool setting with olive oil soap in the machine, and then I eco-print them. And the same thing in the eco-printing pot, because the bundles are tied very tightly, they are certainly going into very hot liquid, but they're getting no agitation whatsoever. They also don't shrink in the eco-printing pot. And then afterwards, I wash them out again in the washing machine. So don't be afraid of that. Just make sure you don't put it on an aggressive wash where there's a lot of agitation. So the next question, and I hope you see I'm trying to do these in a little bit of an order. We're now coming to some eco-printing questions here. So the next question is, it says in your eco-printing in the Dirty Pot ebook to start your pot by putting eucalyptus leaves and onion skins in. Do you take them out when adding the bundles when you're printing? So no, I don't. I have a very large pot and I actually leave my eucalyptus leaves and my vegetation in the pot for months on end, unless my pot is starting to get crammed full and I don't have space for the bundles. So when you're starting an eco-printing pot, I recommend an aluminium pot. I recommend some rusty metal, some vinegar, eucalyptus leaves if you have them. And I usually don't add the onion skins in until after I have added my bundles. And the reason for this is that the onion skins release their color very quickly, and it also gets absorbed by the fabric very quickly. So if I put the onion skins in at the very beginning, once I put the first bundle or two into the pot, they will take up all the dye from the onion skins. So I like to wait until all my bundles are in the pot and then add the onion skins. So they do something called exhaust. So onion skins exhaust in the dye pot. And what that means is they release all their color. So after you have had a session and you have onion skins in your dye pot, if you scooped them out and you had a look at them and you held them up to the light, you can almost see through them. Now they might look a little black from the iron or the rusty metal that you may have put in your pot, but you will see that they have lost their goldeny brown color and their dye has been released. So if your pot is not very big, I recommend you do take them out. But if you have plenty of space, that's after you've used them. If you have plenty of space in your pot, only take the vegetation out every few sessions when you're starting to get it a little bit too crowded. Now, for those of you who might be interested, there is a link in the video description below to my comprehensive ebook about working in the dirty pot. And really what this means is working without traditional powdered mordants. So if you are interested in working in a health conscious and environmentally mindful way, that book might be the one for you. So here's a question from somebody who has actually bought the book. And In her question, I actually had an image of a bag, which I don't have here to share with you right now. So she actually said that she really liked the color of the bag in my image, and she wanted to achieve the same. So she set her dirty pot up exactly as I recommended in the ebook, and she didn't get the same colors. And why is this? So this is a good question, and it's something that I am certainly going to answer now, but it's really important to understand several things. The first is, when you are working with traditional mordants, you are working with chemicals and natural dye colors and also vegetation. And because you're working with the chemicals and dye powders, you can actually predict what results you are going to get, because you're working with a known quantity. And if you have any natural dye books, I actually recommend, as a starting book, I recommend Wild Color by Jenny Dean. It's a wonderful book. So if you have a book, or if you have a recipe in a natural dye book, you have to weigh your fabric, you weigh your mordant, you weigh your natural dye material, and you work on percentages and you achieve a known outcome. So I could use natural dyeing process and I could achieve a color, and I could tell you exactly how to get the same color. But a lot of what happens with eco-printing in the dirty pot without the mordant, a lot of my results, I can predict them because I have the experience. But if you're new to eco-printing in the dirty pot, it's going to take longer to identify how you can achieve the results. I can help you, but I can't do it for you. It's today I was helping my mother. I was visiting mum, and I was cooking roast stuffed lamb for lunch and vegetables. And I usually cook in an oil-fired range or a gas cooker. I know both of them, and I can predict how my food is going to turn out. Mum has an electric oven, and honestly, while the lamb cooked and mum and her neighbor enjoyed it, I mean, it wasn't anything like as tender as if I had cooked it in my own oven. And that's because my oven needs a lower temperature and longer cooking times in general, and I get a much better result. But the electric oven is totally different. So you can't expect to get the same results I get unless you have exactly the same setup as I have. So I have a large aluminium pot. I have a chunk of rusty metal in the pot. I have dirty, dark looking pot liquid. And the next thing that you need is you need to have the same fabric as I have. So in the particular bag that this person was asking the question about, that fabric was upholstery wool, but she had posted an image of a silk scarf that she had printed and also a piece of felt, and she wanted to achieve the colors I did. Well, unless the fabric is the same, you're not going to get identical colors. But then the final thing is, unless the vegetation is the same. So certainly if somebody else has the same sort of eucalyptus leaves as I have, and they have felt, and they have the similar vegetation in their eco-printing pot, they will get a similar result. But without understanding what each gives, you need to get used to your own vegetation. You're not going to get the same results. I can guide you. And that leads me on to the next question about how do I adjust the pot liquid to achieve different background colors. So this question has come from somebody different, but actually it also applies to the person who would like to print something the same color as my bag. So aside from the fact that that's a thick wool, and I have a big aluminium pot, and I used specific leaves, if I wanted to suggest to somebody how they could achieve similar colors and they didn't have the right eucalyptus leaves, I would say try with brown onion skins. I would say have a little bit less iron in the pot, but judging from the colors they were achieving, they need a lot more either eucalyptus leaves, bark, and onion skins, or onion skins in the pot. They will never get the colors I'm achieving without having more vegetation that's going to give that color. So I hope that doesn't sound too complicated, but You have to learn from experience which vegetation gives you which color, and then you work from there. So if you have eucalyptus leaves from a florist, in general, the majority of leaves from a florist are going to give you red prints. They tend to be Eucalyptus cinerea, which is sold as silver dollar. Sometimes they are actually, I think they're Blue Lagoon, or they might be Eucalyptus parvifolia. But in general, the eucalyptus leaves you get in floral bouquets tend to give red prints. So I recommend that if you really want to try and achieve similar red prints to me and you're not quite sure where to start, I would actually recommend using a combination of onion skins and some stems of eucalyptus that you have bought from a florist. And people say, oh, they're very expensive. They're $2 or $3 a stem. And I appreciate that every dollar counts. We all want to be mindful of expenses, of buying in vegetation, etc., etc. But if you want to experiment and get really good results, I'll put it in perspective. The last time I bought eucalyptus leaves before I was growing all my own, I paid 45 euros for 3 bunches of stems. So I had no hesitation spending 45 euros when I saw these beautiful leaves with flower buds on them, because I knew they would give me good prints. Ironically, only 1 bunch did and the other 2 bunches didn't, but that's neither here nor there. In general, eucalyptus leaves from the florist work very well. So if I wanted to create a very red background color rather than a chocolate brown or a black one, I would actually, if I knew my eucalyptus leaves gave red prints, I would actually take the dirty pot liquid out of my pot, and I would make a pot, I would save it in a bucket, and I would make a new liquid with vinegar, water, and loads of eucalyptus leaves and no rusty metal. And that will give you very red background color and color at the outside of your bundle and under your tie lines. But only do that if you know that your eucalyptus will already give you good red prints. If you wanted a rich chocolate brown, you can add in onion skins. You can use the red giving eucalyptus and onion, or just onion skins, again with no iron, rusty metal, if you want it to be very, very reddy brown. But then a nice chocolate brown needs some iron, and then the darker colors, more iron. So it's very important to stress as a beginner, only some vegetation works when you're working. It gives good prints without traditional powdered mordants. And the less iron you have involved in the process, the less color fast your pieces will be, and usually the weaker your prints. So you've got to get that balance between having iron that gives you a color you like and having enough that you're going to get washable and color fast prints. So I personally love a lot of iron, and I like dark things. So almost exclusively I have iron in my pieces. Now, if you're getting value out of what I'm saying, if you think this makes sense, please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the bell for the next videos that come. So moving on. Can a bundle sit at the bottom of the pot and not move during 2.5 hours processing time? Yes, it can. I have a reservation. I rarely rotate my bundles unless I'm working in a long, thin fish kettle. I do rotate them usually in that. But in a regular pot, I don't take my bundles out. However, I make sure that there's loads of pot liquid. So you don't want your bundles crammed in the bottom of a pot without too much pot liquid, because what will happen is certain areas of the bundle, the piece at the bottom of the pot, for example, is going to get much hotter, and you may get bands of color on your fabric. So I would say there's no problem leaving them sit there. I mean, I was facilitating a workshop yesterday and I had 4 wonderful participants and myself. So we ended up with quite a few bundles in the pot. I never moved them around whatsoever during the processing time, 2.5 hours, but I did top the pot liquid up and I made sure they were well submerged for the whole time. So yes, they can sit on the bottom of the pot and not move, but make sure there's plenty of water or liquid. And this is another one. So could the rolled pieces sit on end in the dirty pot instead of horizontally? So by that, I'm just going to use this little thing I have here. So say here's the bundle. Normally they go in the pot this way, but the question is, can they go in this way? Yes, they can, but you won't fit as many in a pot this way, but certainly they can go in a pot. So if you have a big pot that's tall and thin, you can put bundles in that way. Again, I would have them totally submerged, totally covered with water. Now, how do you retain the white of your felt so it doesn't become muddy looking? Well, this is the $1 million question. I find that when I'm working with a lower micron wool, a finer wool, I usually use a 19.5 micron merino. So the finer the quality of the wool, I find that I get crisper prints and the white of the felt is not influenced as much by the pot liquid. However, I think that if your felt is well felted and you roll it up, it's only the felt on the outside of the bundle that's going to really get colored more by the pot liquid. So I would just say you need to roll your felt very tightly. I have no problem keeping my felt white in the center. That's because I felt the pieces fully, so they're fully shrunk. So that fiber is very tight and compact. Then I roll them really tightly. I tie them tightly. I put them in the dirty pot. And the most influence of the color is around the outside of the bundle and at the edges of the bundle. And that's what I do. I don't wrap the bundle in any cotton or any other fabric, but you could wrap your bundle in cotton or other fabric if you don't want the dark marks with the tie lines on top of it. But really, I suspect that most people who get muddy looking felt in general, it's because their felt has been made with a coarser wool and it's not shrunk as much. It's not fulled as much. That would be my suspicion. Now, we don't have that many more questions unless you have some you want to ask me. So here's a second last question. So can the diluted vinegar for soaking protein fibers before printing be reused over and over again? So if you're not familiar with eco-printing without mordants, vinegar is a modifier. And when we're working with protein-based fibers such as wool, silk, and cashmere, it really, really helps bring out the color. And people who say, well, it doesn't affect the results, I disagree. I think it definitely sharpens the color. So I like to soak all my protein-based fabric in either pure vinegar or a vinegar water solution before I print, or else I soak the fabric for overnight in water and then I sprinkle the vinegar on before I print. So if you are soaking, if you're making a vinegar water solution, let's say you have 50% vinegar and you have 50% water, and you've soaked your felt or your fabric in plain water first, and then you're going to put that wet fabric into the vinegar water solution. What's going to happen is you start diluting the vinegar. So I would use the same vinegar water a couple of times, but if I was putting a lot of heavier items in, I would only maybe use it twice. If I wasn't putting such heavy items, if it was just a few silk scarves, I would maybe use it 3 times. But then what I would do is I would tip that vinegar water into my processing pot. So yesterday, when I was facilitating the workshop, we soaked our pieces in a 50% vinegar, 50% water solution. That was our silk scarves. And our wool pieces. They were soaked in plain water, and then afterwards they had pure vinegar sprinkled on them. So all the vinegar water solution that was left over at the end of the workshop, I put it into the eco-printing pot, because it's going to be a few weeks before I'm able to print again. I'm doing some recording, a few other things for the membership club that I have. So I knew I wouldn't be using the vinegar water in the short term, and I didn't want it to get a bit moldy. So I put it into the eco-printing pot. And so here's the final question that I selected from the ones that were asked over on the private or the public group that I have. So I'm just going to flick this up again for a second. If you're interested in joining the group, this is the name of the group on Facebook. And I've also dropped that in the video description below. So periodically I will be throwing it out there. If you have questions and you would like them answered in a video, you can drop them to me in the group. So here is a question that somebody has asked. I'm only going to answer it in a small way, but I see some people getting color from eucalyptus on rust dipped cellulose. What's the combination, the best varieties, and the best type of fabric? So I'll answer the fabric question first. So I personally like printing linen and ramie. Ramie is made from nettles. They would be my two favorite woven cellulose fabrics. And I absolutely love printing on organic fabric, which I'm going to spell the name H-E-M-P, because if I say that name, I may get flagged for mentioning something inappropriate. But it's a wonderful, I can buy an organic fleece, or I can buy lighter fabrics made from H-E-M-P, and I find them fantastic. Cotton would be my least favorite of the cellulose-based fabrics to print on. You can also print on tencel, which is made from eucalyptus leaves. It's much more manufactured though, or you can print on viscose. So my favorite would be linen, H-E-M-P, and ramie. Those are my favorites. Now, to be honest, I am not quite sure which color you have seen people get from eucalyptus on rust dipped fabric, because in my experience, you get very little color. You can certainly get greens, but you really get very little red on rust dipped fabric. If you want to get color on cellulose based fabric and you don't want to use traditional powdered mordants, the best way of doing that is by using a protein liquid such as soy milk or yogurt or full fat milk. And you can dip your fabric several times in a solution of soy milk and water, for example. Let it dry between dips, and then you're building up more protein into the fabric. And that can help achieve more colorful results. But in general, on rust dipped cellulose fabric, you're going to be getting blacks and more purpley colors, and I absolutely love them. So I'm not sure whose images of work you've seen online, but I would be saying you're going to get blacks and purpley blacks on rust dipped cellulose, and you need to do different preparation if you want to get colorful prints. So those are my 10 questions that I've answered. If anybody has a question now, please drop me a comment. But I don't actually think, I haven't got any comments there now. So I think that's really it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in live or tuning in on the replay. Mary actually has dropped me a comment to say, thanks, Nicola. I had a lot of these questions, so I learned a lot. You're very welcome, Mary. And here's someone else. Thank you, Nicola. You're all very welcome. I'm more than happy to answer the questions for people. And I do think it is really important to stress that there is so much information on YouTube, on Facebook and Instagram. It can become overwhelming. So I think that it's important to understand, just strip it back to the basics and don't try too many different things at the one time, or you won't be able to identify exactly what is giving you what results. So Barb has a comment. So Barbara, this one is actually available on my public group, because this is not a club video. This is a regular weekly YouTube video. So this video is either available on my Facebook group, the public group, or it is available on YouTube. As soon as this is over, it's going to be available to watch afterwards on YouTube. So for anybody who hasn't been here live and listened to the 10 or more questions and answers I've gone through, if you have a question of your own, please just leave them as a comment and I will get back to you as soon as I get a chance. So thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure and I look forward to seeing you in my next YouTube video. Over and out from Clasheen.